Welcome to the Bias Buzz, powered by Accuracy Media. He's Brian McNichol. I'm Don Irvine.
Good morning.
All right, top of the news. We're going to go to the election second. We need to talk a little bit, spend a few minutes talking about the terrorist attack in Brussels yesterday. Brian, give me your take on this.
My take on it is it's another side. There's two things. One is the other side of what happens when the United States is absent from leadership in the world. This problem is metastasized because we have not done anything to stop it. The other people who have worked in the area, their interest is not in stopping it. It's in fomenting it towards certain aims, right? We have the right aims, but we're not doing anything about it. The other thing is about assimilation. When assimilation is left to the government, it is done like every other thing the government does, in haphazard fashion, and it's not working. So if the solution to Europe's problems is you're really going to have to connect to the people.
All right, so here's the thing for me too, is just that Europe has this border issue. I mean, they really believe in kind of this open society, open borders, and it really kind of comes back to bite them. Now, I don't know how much of this attack was based on the capture of this Salah Abdeslam the other day, but it seems that it was awfully close. And it looks like we have, security failure here, just a lot of things. I mean, they can go and they can clamp down, but they're not fighting the bigger problem. I mean, Europe will not fight back and say, we need to get rid of ISIS, we need to fight the Islamic State. Instead, they kind of take these piecemeal approaches to these things, right?
That's right. That's a big part of this problem is that, something happening elsewhere is fomenting into Europe. It's overflowing into Europe. And so you have these people that, the thing that should bother people is there was an attack at the airport, 30 or so people dead, right? And there were hundreds of thousands of people cheering it. Like, yeah, you got him again. That's not getting them. We can't live together like that.
Well, this is something I thought was interesting that was reported. Tony Blair, apparently, according to media, they think he made this statement or talked about this before the attack even occurred. But he basically said, you have to give a real solution and not one which is populist but false. If you don't give a solution and you leave people with a choice between what I would call a bit of flabby liberalism and the hard line, they will take the hard line, I'm afraid. And so he called for a more assertive policy of muscular centrism. This is Tony Blair. I mean, he's trying to wake up Europe and say, right, you can't just keep operating on this basis.
Right. The one function of government that everyone agrees on is it has to keep order. It's not keeping order. I mean, it's beyond government to keep this order. You've essentially let an enemy in camp in your country.
All right, I'm going to segue into this a little bit too. Obama's trip to Cuba, only because he was still there during the attacks. He did make a statement about the attacks, but he decided to stay. I mean, what is up with that?
Well, this was all about theatrics, and he's got his photo shoot with him in front of the Che monument. He's got his photo shoot at the baseball game. I don't understand what he's doing there because he got completely punked by Castro. He said, we're not normalizing anything with you until you close Guantanamo. Now, Obama wanted to close Guantanamo, right? He's called for it. He's worked for it sporadically ever since he's been in the White House. But now he really can't because it will have been done, because of extortion by a tiny island nation driving around I don't know if you saw any of the video but there's all these like 1950s rusted out cars, very few cars on the road, very little traffic, like the traffic of a small town.
Well, very much like the movies we've seen where you see those old cars running around. I mean, there's been a flood of business now. All kinds of deals are now being struck like this, but this was definitely a big propaganda, ploy here. Castro says that he doesn't know anything about any political prisoners, and
give me the list.
Yeah, give me the list. I mean, give me a break is what I say for that. Come on, this is ridiculous. This baseball game thing. I mean, what I read about Obama and the reason for staying is that he was saying something along the lines of, well, if I come back and react, that is in essence giving in to the terrorists, us giving them what they want. Granted, there's no probably immediate danger to the United States domestically, for terrorism. but I think it still sends a bad signal when you decide to stay in Cuba, in a communist nation, and pal around with Raul Castro, and then take in this propagandistic baseball game, which they're using as a showcase. The optics are terrible, but I guess as a lame duck president, maybe Obama doesn't care.
Right. And, his thing has been, we're not going to go very slowly with all this anyway. So, his whole approach to ISIS is wait and let it play itself out. It's not going to play itself out. And the next president, and that's one good thing about this, even if Hillary Clinton wins, we will be a lot stronger against ISIS next year.
Well, that'll be good news.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the primary. So now we're kind of moving along through the primary process. We've had, I think, 32 states vote caucus, whether or not it's a primary or a caucus or whatever. Yesterday, for the Republicans, they had a vote in Arizona and the caucus in Utah. Two pretty different results. Ted Cruz, as far as I can see, based on the information from Fox News, just really crushed it with what I believe is the highest percentage total that I've seen in this campaign so far. I don't recall anybody getting 69% of the vote. Trump took 47 in Arizona, so he gets all the delegates there. Cruz met the 50% threshold in Utah, so he gets all the delegates there. Trump still gains a little bit, but the path forward is still going to be a little bit, muted, a little bit long here, unless Cruz picks up all these other delegates from, say, Rubio or Kasich at this point.
The politics of the two states, and as far as immigration goes, couldn't be more different. In Utah, it's almost like a sanctuary state. If you come there and you stay out of trouble and work, you can stay. There are, people who are sensitive to being discriminated against and so forth. They stick together, right? Arizona, it's a very raw subject. My in-laws live about 40 miles above the Mexican border. And we were driving in there one day, and they stopped me one night, and they stopped me and give me a speeding ticket. And the guy comes back, shoves my license at me, takes off running. We go a mile down the road. He has a bunch of immigrants under arrest, right? Then they live on a golf course. The next night, there's 10 guys running down the 18th fairway and 100 cops chasing them, right? Lights, helicopters, everything. So this is a raw subject for Arizona. So those people in that part of Arizona, I mean, it's in their life. They're in a running rear guard battle, right? And they're just sort of live in the middle of it.
That's right, I think. And then whereas Utah, people will make their way up into Utah and to the other states, but not being a border state, it is a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah, Utah definitely is more of a sanctuary state, and I hate to admit how many. My father was born there, and I've got lots of relatives there. I think a lot of people have kind of just looked the other way with that. You get into the whole issue of driver's license for illegals, and all kinds of things pop up as a result. But yeah, it created two very different views of how things were going. I think we talked earlier, on previous shows. I didn't think that Trump was going to lose Arizona by any stretch of imagination. I think Cruz thought he had a chance, but I think Cruz would have stood a little bit better chance had Kasich not been there, had maybe Rubio dropped out earlier. This also goes back to earlier discussions we've had about early voting. A lot of votes were cast beforehand, before Rubio dropped out. It could have affected the race a little bit. I'm not sure it would have done enough to put Cruz over the top in this case, but you never know.
Right, that's true, and that's a strong issue. That's a good. He had Arpaio, Governor Brewer. He had for the immigration crowd, which is a big crowd in Arizona. He had Trump had all the key endorsements.
All right, so I'm just going to review what Real Clear Politics has this morning on the delegate count. So they have Donald Trump now with 739 delegates. Ted Cruz with 465, Marco Rubio's at 166, so he's out of the race, and John Kasich at 143, and they don't list Carson or Bush, who have got a handful of there. So based on that, and the math is, I think when you look at it, you're going to see lots of different figures. I calculated based on looking at the Real Clear Politics site that Trump still needs roughly 59% of the remaining delegates. I've seen numbers where he needs 55%. Nevertheless, he still needs more than 50% to win the nomination outright by the convention. Cruz he needs 92%. But I did a little thing here. I said, well, if he gets 80% of the Rubio-Kasich delegates, then he'll need 63%, which is much more doable than 92%. It's still a race. The question is like, what is Kasich angling for? He got nothing yesterday.
Fewer votes than Rubio.
Yeah,
Who's not in the race.
And Wisconsin comes up in a couple of weeks.
Right.
It does give Kasich a chance to make his case, but I think Cruz still probably winds up winning that with Trump's second. I don't know. I don't think Kasich gets a whole lot out of that. He just falls further behind. He has no way to the path to the nomination. He's really just more of a spoiler at this point. Whether he's angling for a VP spot with, say, Trump, I don't know what the heck's going on with him right now.
Well, he says he absolutely will not accept a VP spot. That's what he says right now. Who knows what happens if it's offered. He's also staying in. He thinks that if he can stay in and get there with some kind of substantial pile of delegates, that people will say, I can't stand Cruz, I can't stand Trump. Who else is there? He's the only one. He has had enough success probably to justify staying, although he was embarrassed last night. And he thinks there's a constituency out there for him. Now, a bad development for him this morning, Jeb Bush saying that he plans to endorse Cruz. That's the big money, the big New York money is now saying Cruz. That's a big get for Cruz, and not in terms of it's not going to turn a lot of votes, and it may be close to a push on votes, right? Because X amount of people will say, sell out to the establishment. It's a negative for Cruz to have Bush associated with it, but a lot of influencers in the party were behind Bush, right? And if Bush is saying this is our next best hope, then those influencers, a lot of people who have more than one vote, will coalesce behind Cruz.
Right, and I wasn't too sure that endorsements early on in the campaign were going to be all that great because we had, 17 candidates running and they started falling off a little bit, but really until the field narrowed, I didn't think those things really mattered. Now I think they do play a bigger part. Now you're seeing the candidates who dropped out, they're now they're turning around and they're starting to endorse. We're not seeing anything yet from Rubio, but having Bush's people support Cruz could give him huge momentum and give him great financial backing, which could make a difference. Kasich, getting a pile of delegates before the convention, it's still a long shot. I mean, he's totally stuck in the mud right now. He needs to do something. He's won one race. It's a lot, right? It's a lot like Rubio before Rubio lost Florida. Rubio really hadn't done much. It's pretty hard to make the case for these guys when those things are happening. And there's also the other part of the wild card in there is that there will be unbound delegates going into the convention. So we don't know where they're going. There's a fight in the Virgin Islands. The state chair or the territorial chair, whatever you want to call him, there he's rescinded the delegates the way they stand. It looks a little bit like some politics going on there, and we'll see how that turns out. But it could wind up being that in the end, those that are actually uncommitted, the unbound going in, might actually make the bigger difference than everybody else who voted in the primary at that stage. So we'll see how that goes. Talk just a little bit about, quickly hit on some of the fundraising thing on the Democratic side. I think the Democratic race is pretty much over. Sanders is just not getting the numbers. He's getting some wins. He got some wins last night, but he's not getting large enough numbers to overtake Hillary. So I think she's basically a fait accompli. But at least he makes noise and he's entertaining to have in the race. But he, interestingly enough, he is raising a heck of a lot of money, showing that despite the fact that he may not win a ton of primaries, he may not win the delegate count in the nomination, there's a heck of a lot of support. They announced earlier this week raised $43.5 million in February versus Hillary's $30.1 million. Overall, $140 million from 2 million donors. Hillary's raised $161 million from 1 million donors. So, I have to admit, Bernie definitely is a man of the people, at least the little people. He has a lot of support from people just throwing in a few bucks.
Yeah, the thing about it is he, I guess his play now is to get to the convention with enough support to get some stuff into the platform. Right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he has some things that he'd like to see get done. He carries a big enough stick in there. He says, I may not get the nomination, but I should have enough influence that, if you really want my people to support Hillary, you're going to have to make a few concessions in the platform or something to be able to placate me.
And who is Hillary's VP?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, one of the names that was floated this past week was Tom Perez from Labor.
Yes, you.
Well, yeah, and we know him from
problems.
Montgomery County,
Right.
and so yeah, he's not exactly my favorite guy, but we're not talking about Democrats, so yeah, go ahead, Hillary, choose him. I think I think he's poison for her. So,
But Bernie has been, for an opponent, extremely deferential. He makes a point in every debate to say either of us is better than all of them. He refers to her as the secretary. He's polite about how he does it. Right, his arguments are straightforward. No big money influence and so forth. And what he goes after her on is consistent with that. He also has, as we know, declined to go after her on the emails and so forth. Don't want to hear about your emails, right? So that path might be open to him. And then she co-opts everything to the left of Ted Cruz, right? Because that's all the lefties. They'd all be under one umbrella. So I don't think it's terribly shocking, especially showing up with, 2 million donors and $140 million. This says that he has the money to make it to the end.
right, yeah, I mean, and I think that's surprising to a lot of people is that, it looked like a very quixotic campaign when it began. That how would he have a chance to compete against, a name and all the connections of Hillary Clinton? But she has obviously had a few weaknesses along the way. He's exploited those to a certain extent. He has steered clear of making this something that where the Republicans have been very good about. They've been good about tearing each other up and giving fodder to the other side. You don't get a lot out of Bernie that's damaging enough to Hillary, that's helping the Republicans
Right.
enough. That's they're smart in that way. I'll give them credit. The Republicans just like to eat their own, and the Democrats they play this a little more carefully.
They sure did.
Yeah, they know how to kind of band together with those things.
He also, another asset, and then none of them will talk about this, but he brings sort of like Nixon's plumbers unit to the game, right? He has some tricksters. He's sending people into these rallies. The Bernie Bros are, on social media trashing Hillary. He has hands off. I'm not saying that. These guys I don't even know are saying that. But it's attacks that, sure are conveniently, good
Right.
for Bernie.
Right. All right. Well, we'll move on. We got to keep quickly going on here. Just a quick thing here. There's Donald Trump and Fox News seem to continue their fight. It escalated last week after Trump issued a tweet saying that everybody should boycott Megyn Kelly. Never worth watching. Always a hit on Trump. She is sick and the most overrated person on television. Fox responded with a long response about calling Trump's vitriolic attacks and his extreme sick obsession with her beneath the dignity of a presidential candidate who wants to occupy the highest office in the land. And then backed up Megyn. The thing is that and then Trump also issued another tweet along the way about something to the effect that without him, Megyn Kelly's ratings would be in the tank, and that's not true. Megyn Kelly, whether or not you like her or not, and there's definitely been, thanks to Trump, she's gotten a lot of attention. A lot of conservatives probably are following Trump and probably now agreeing with him and not becoming some kind of Kelly haters. But she's their superstar. I mean, they're giving her own 1 hour program, her that kind of special kind of a thing like that. She is front and center of their future. They want to parade her a lot. The Trump stuff, I think, just becomes background noise in the end. It maybe helps both of them to a certain extent, but I think Kelly's ratings are just fine.
Well, they'll let her keep her show, and they should. But she got some tattoos in that first debate. She has some marks on her that you can never get off. She decided consciously and expressed that she was doing it, that she was going after one of the candidates, right? Did she say, the whole loyalty oath, the whole scope of a lot of her questions in that debate were designed to out him as a, know nothing or whatever, and she went after her mark and she didn't get it. Now he's he's right. He got attacked, and the debate is supposed to not. That's not the format for that, right? He was right about what happened at first. Now, separating out, I'm not for Trump, but separating that out, he didn't get journalism that night. He didn't get a fair shake. He's right about that, and she can never get that off her record. She's going to be dealing with that from now on. Now, will it matter? No, she's got fine ratings, and she's going to make a lot of money, and she's going to be on TV a long time, and her relationship with Trump is inconsequential at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, if he becomes president, she probably would like to have interview him at some point in time, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
And there's a lot of people at Fox who can interview him.
Right. Yeah, and O'Reilly's interviewed Obama at least a couple of times, I think, by now. Quick hit, Merrick Garland, the Obama Supreme Court nominee. Will he get a hearing? Should he get a hearing?
No, he will not. No, he should not.
All right. Can the Republicans afford that?
Yeah, they can.
Right.
It's pretty soon. What is the calendar is going to end in about middle of August this year, right? Is the election, if that far. So that's all you have to really survive.
So the benefit here really is the fact that the Republicans have created a calendar which they are going to spend a lot of time off, either at home on vacation or on the campaign trail, therefore leading to very few days that they were actually going to be around to hold a hearing, so they could probably finagle their way through this and kick this can down the road to the next Senate, next president.
Right, and that one is, there's an absolute bullseye argument on that, and that is the Democrats would do the same thing in their position, and you cannot prove to the satisfaction of any fair-minded person that that's not true.
All right, couple more things. Yesterday in the news, late yesterday, it came up that Sarah Palin may get her own reality show, kind of in the Judge Judy format. She has no legal background, which would be interesting, but the way those shows are, I'm not quite sure exactly how much legal background you need anyway. I don't know. I mean, I just think that this is one of the worst ideas in television I have ever heard. I don't know. What about you?
I agree, and I think that she's, I guess she'll make some money for doing the show, but the show's not going to last, right? Because that's not what she is. And she's giving away the chance to make and she makes a lot of money. And she deserves to. She's a marketable thing, and she handles it well, and she works hard. She's at a lot of events. She's doing a lot of stuff. But I mean, that's not what she is. She's a thought leader for a lot of conservative women. And I mean some men too. But I mean, she's a kind of an archetype for a lot of women who are active in the movement.
Yeah, I'm disappointed with this just because I liked Sarah Palin when she came on the scene, and she had a lot of sway. Even losing the vice presidential race, in essence, when they lost the presidency, that presidential race, it still provided a springboard for her. She became really front and center, one of the big spokespersons for the Tea Party, the conservative movement. But it seems that the actions that she's taken lately, all these things, is just kind of a little bit from crazy town, and the shine, is really off that. The bloom is off the rose, or whatever they say.
Yeah. It's like she's starved for attention.
Yeah, it's she was worried about being irrelevant, but I think this makes her more irrelevant.
Yeah.
All right, we talked about March Madness last week. We'll end the show with this. We're now down to the Sweet 16. It was an interesting group of games we had last week, and we have 6 ACC teams in here, which is phenomenal, including Syracuse, which I didn't think should be there in the first place, but they're there. So, they won their games, and so they deserve to be there. My Maryland is still fighting, but they're going to have a tough slog against Kansas. Not impossible, but it's going to be a tough game. And my bracket is long busted since I had chosen Michigan State. So I don't know. What do you think? Where are we going? It's who's going to make it to the Elite Eight maybe here?
I'll love Maryland against Kansas. They know how each other think. No one's going to get fooled in that game either way. And Maryland has 4 guys who are potential NBA guys, and Kansas has none. That makes a difference. I mean, it's like, why does the SEC win every week? Well, because they got better players.
And I do think for Maryland's case, Melo has played a lot better. My concern about that last game was that they hit 1 of 18 3-pointers.
Yeah.
I don't think that's likely to happen again. I think they'll make more. Maybe they'll make 30% of the shots instead of 5% of the shots. But it will make a difference in the game, and they do have some incredible talent. They just haven't quite always put together the full game, the complete game this year. Duke's still in there. I mean, like I just said, Syracuse. There's some interesting teams in there. I think we'll see where this goes. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had Kansas and Michigan State in the final, but if Maryland somehow manages to make it to the Elite Eight in the Final Four, I think they become almost a prohibitive favorite potentially.
I have Texas A&M in the Final Four. And
they just barely,
they dodged their bullet.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things in this tournament is pressing. There's a new rebirth of pressing. Okay, how did they beat Northern Iowa? They pressed them, right? And Northern Iowa came back to the ball, and they caught the ball and never saw their teammates, right? You had two Aggies on you, right? And they came, what did they make up, 12 points in 30 seconds? And I think there's 4 or 5 other games that have turned because of pressing, full court pressure. I bet next year season starts to unwind. You'll start seeing a lot more full court pressure, just people just putting it in their program, because it's, you make people handle the ball, and you're making big guys dribble, right? You're making people play out of position, do things they're uncomfortable doing. That's a real good team. They knocked LSU out of the tournament. In the SEC tournament, they beat them 71-38, the fewest points anybody scored in a game in Division I this year. And part of it was LSU was lackluster, but part of it was they were really good. They're real good on defense. They have a lot of these 8-9 minutes where you don't score periods. That's 40-minute game. If I've lopped off a quarter of your production, that's pretty good. That's strong.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're definitely a force to be reckoned with, and so people just should keep an eye on them. All right, as we conclude here, just want to make our listeners aware of that AIM has produced a short video on Bernie Sanders and the fallacy of free college tuition, free college education. We're already getting some comments by the liberals and having fun on the YouTube page, so please go to the AIM website and check that out. It's a lot of fun. And also, to make sure you're following us, continue to follow me on Periscope so you can watch the show live. Follow AIM on Twitter at Accuracy and Media. Like the Facebook page so you'll stay up to date. Also, we can announce that we now have Sean Hannity confirmed for our Reed Irvine Accuracy and Media Award event on April 21st. You can go to our website, Facebook page to see how to get a free ticket for that. So if you do that, but those will go very, very fast. And with that, I want to thank you, Brian, for joining me again today. And thank Spencer Irvine for handling all of our engineering stuff, and for Stephen Irvine, who will do all the post-production work. So happy Easter, everyone, and we will see you again next week.